I'd like to welcome all of you to this conversation between Rafael Correa and Jeremy Corbyn under the general title of the US, Latin America, Neo-liberalism and Alternatives Today. My name is Christine Blower, and I have the very, very great pleasure of chairing and introducing this meeting, which is supported by a range of Latin America solidarity and community organizations. I'm just going to make a very brief introduction before we go to our speakers. This is, of course, an extremely timely introduction. We might have been having it at the time when we knew who the new president of the United States was going to be, but at the moment we just see Joe Biden inching in that direction. However, frankly, whoever is the president of the United States, it's important that we as internationalists stand with all of those struggling for democracy, for social progress, for self-determination in Latin America, including in Ecuador. And it is therefore an honor to be joined this evening by Rafael Correa, who did so much to transform the lives of the people of his country, where people again today are engaged in a massive struggle for change. Like Lula in Brazil, Rafael Correa has been the victim of lawfare, and on this call and in so many other places, we offer him our complete solidarity. We're also this evening joined by Jeremy Corbyn, whom everyone in this call must obviously know, and who has been a campaigner for international peace and justice for so many years, including, of course, all of the popular struggles in Latin America, from Chile in the 1970s to Bolivia today, and so much more besides. So we're pleased to be joined by so many of you on Zoom. Do please tell us where you're from in the Q&A section. The housekeeping is this: if you wish to hear the translation, if you wish to hear this meeting in English, you need to select the English channel. If you wish to hear it in Spanish, you need to select the Spanish channel. And in the chat, there will be links posted by our volunteers about how you can follow Labour Friends of Progressive Latin America and show your support, in particular by donating to the cost of this evening's meeting, but in very many other ways. So before we move to our key speakers and their conversation, we're going to hear from one of the people involved in organising today's events. And that person is Belgia Guana, representing two Ecuadorian community organizations, Enlace Latinoamericano in Europe, in Ecuador, and Colectivo Ecuatoriano Ricciari, and I'd like to give her the floor now to make a 2 or 3 minute intervention. Thank you. Belgia, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Christine. Good evening to everyone across Europe and the world. My name is Belgia Guana. I am Ecuadorian. I am former coordinator of the Citizen Revolution in Europe. I am councillor in Canning Town South Ward in Newham in East London. I am also representing Enlace Latinoamerican in Europe, Versión Ecuador, and the Colectivo Ecuatoriano Ricciari in the UK. These are areas for integration of Latin American migrants in Europe. It is a privilege and honor to give our warm welcome. This evening, we have two extraordinary human beings, who are the former president of my homeland, Ecuador, Rafael Correa, and the former leader of the Labour Party in my second homeland, Jeremy Corbyn. Both of you have inspired millions across the world because of your principles and values. Millions admire both of you, not only for your political achievements, but also for your humanity and for your international solidarity with people suffering social injustice everywhere. Thank you for accepting to take part in this conversation. And not with no further introduction, let's welcome our great guest. Thank you.
Belgia, thank you very much for your welcome and introduction. And let us move straight on now to the first of our speakers. So we are absolutely delighted to have with us President Rafael Correa, former president of Ecuador, and I have to say, globally renowned campaigner for social justice. President, the floor is yours.
Bueno, buenas noches a los que nos siguen de Europa.
Evening, everybody in Europe. Good morning, Latin America. Thank you very much to the organizers of this event for inviting us to me, Belgica, and I have to everybody, you know how much I like her. Many people were expelled from their own country in the crisis of 1999 in Ecuador when they confiscated the deposits of the biggest confiscation of private depositing banks in the history of Ecuador, the bankers, and that produced a terrible recession, bankruptcy of banks, unemployment, and migration of hundreds of thousands of Ecuadorians. For me, there are people whose references are to life, and what they had to confront was terrible. We're in a very strong storm. Yeah, I apologize to the translator for speaking so fast. He's right. I'm delighted to participate in this conversation. If I understood the question very well, to do justice to what is going on, to explain what is going on in Latin America, what is going on in Latin America, there was a golden epoch after the 30 years of neoliberalism when the Berlin Wall fell, the Soviet Union collapsed, then Latin America had to be neoliberal. That was the history of Latin America. This is absurd. Something happened in Latin America, something happened in Germany, we have to pay the price. They called it the Washington Consensus. For the shame of the Latin Americans, there was a consensus in which we didn't even participate. The Soviet bloc was applied, what was applied there, then the Washington Consensus policies were applied against us. Well, the bankruptcy of countries like Ecuador happened, and the beginning they began to collapse one after another, these neoliberal edifices. Because progressive government began to emerge, all of the had, interest in integrating. When Hugo Chavez was elected in 1998, in Venezuela, he won the elections. Then Lula da Silva, then Evo Morales, then Tabaré Vázquez in Uruguay, then Pepe Mujica, then Fernando Lugo in Paraguay, then Dilma Rousseff later on in Brazil, and many other leaders of Latin America that got together, which, they actually made happen what we call the golden period, when all these Latin American countries, many non-Latin speaking or non-Spanish speaking countries, because in Latin America we have Spanish, Portuguese, English, French, and of course the Spanish. We have a little bit of France as well, and there is the French Guyana, which is a colony. It's overseas territory of France. But okay, from 2000 to 2014, there was 10 countries, Latin American countries, 8 of them had left-wing governments, including Paraguay, that had a story of a left-wing government after centuries of not having anything like that. The rest of the world, especially after 2008, the whole world went into recession. Latin America was growing. They grew more than during the neoliberal period. In the neoliberal era, we more or less ended up, in total bankruptcy. In this poverty increased under the golden period, more than 1/3 of the poverty was reduced. There was equality increased enormously. Integration in the South particularly began today, including the Caribbean countries. Latin America began to have presence in the whole of the world. In 2014, this changed quite substantially. The international situation, the price of the commodities collapsed, the raw materials, and in 10, 12 years, it's not possible to change their structures. Our economies are very vulnerable to external shocks. The media and the right wing, which are exactly the same thing. The press, the media are the property of the media. The media are the guardians of the status quo, so they can attack and they will attack any government that's trying to change the status quo. Then the circumstances change. The international economic situation changed, affected us, Latin America. And they said it was the failure of the progressive policies, but with this recession that we began to fail, really, in Latin America. The conditions are created for a parliamentary coup against Dilma Rousseff, but the Organization of American States didn't say anything, the United States didn't say anything. Then we lose the election in Argentina. But the truth is that they lost the election against the Clarín newspaper. Then in Ecuador, we won the election in 2017. But they recruited or co-opted the new president. They betrayed completely. They completely gives himself up to imperialism and the right wing. And lastly, what happened in Bolivia last year, when there was a victory of 10 points different, the extreme right wing in Bolivia, the United States Embassy, they said fraud. They nearly killed Evo Morales. They organized trials against him for terrorism. They issue all, warrant of arrest against him. They trying to arrest him and they banned him from participating in election because he's always won honestly. And these show the kind of attack that the right wing organized against the Bolivians. This is not like in the 90s. There is now the possibility of how to compare. They realize the conservative restoration in a very strong way. In Mexico, in Argentina, in Bolivia, we see that we won the elections, we won the referendum in Chile, and we expect in February to win in Ecuador in 2021. We were not able to participate. We hope to be able to win the presidential elections and the parliamentary elections in Ecuador. Since they cannot defeat us in the ballot box, they use lawfare, the judicialization of politics. And they're using these, particularly this guy, they come from the United States, in order to neutralize. There are fundamentalists in the Middle East which they use conveniently against, democratic governments. They apply this lawfare, which is designed to kill your reputation. The media power, the power of the media, which destroys your reputation. They use any corruption case, they generalize and exaggerate. So since they have been in government for so long, there have to be corruption. And they, for example, in the ministry, they can buy a few tires for a car and then they immediately, they use it so intensely. They condemn it for traffic of influence that they believe, they say that I control everything. The media power is a media power, but nothing to do with what goes on in Latin America, in the sense that Latin America is much worse. There are certain limits in many other places. These, junk media in the United Kingdom, the yellow press in many places, you can take them to court. There are some limitations, at least some, but they still destroy the reputation of politicians by repeating again and again and again lines against them. And then, frighten judges of the media power, and especially if the right wing has won the power, they can be blackmailed. God knows they may have liberated some narco traffickers in the past and so on, and then in that way they intimidate them, and in that way they are able to, this is what they did to Lula in Brazil. They arrested him, they detained him, imprisoned him. But when they did this, who was the presidential candidate, not only they stole his freedom, but they destroyed democracy in Brazil. If Lula had been the candidate, he would have defeated Bolsonaro, who is a shame for Latin America. In Cristina Fernandez de Kirchner, she was accused of everything, absolutely everything imaginable. And Fernandez won the elections despite all of this. Evo Morales, they apply every imaginable kind of media. And then now on Thursday, the cowardly judges decided to lift the charges against Evo Morales, which it was clearly, demonstrated that it was a political persecution. They persecuted Fernando Lugo in Paraguay. They continue to persecute him. And, Jorge Glass, the vice president of Ecuador, they sent him to prison, accused of corruption, and he's been in prison for 3 years. I have 35 criminal cases against him. There's so many other administrative and judicial cases in order to break us. They try to prevent us from returning to the country, from running for office. This is lawfare. There's a very long introduction. I respond the question now. What happened to what Christine was asking? The justice system is being co-opted. So long as we don't resolve this issue, there cannot be democracy really. We have to organize elections within the rule of law. And a fundamental question of the rule of law, I think it's a question not only of the rule of law, it's a question of civilization. If there is the justice system doesn't uphold the rule of law, then without being impartial, without any bias, then we cannot have democracy. And then obviously there is the question of the media. Without an impartial media which is accountable, we're not going to have democracy. You can have honest judges. They need to be heroic right now. And in Latin America, we don't have heroic judges, I'm afraid. We have to produce ethical system capable of, for example, they restructure the whole of the justice system. Of the 10 judges that condemned me, 7 of them had been appointed temporarily by the president. And therefore, that gives you an idea. That goes against every single ethical principle of what law should be about. But what is the solution? It's not a question of a system, it's more than that. There's a more structural issue. We can have new ways of electing them. We can have very good codes, but if we don't have better judges, we are not going to have a proper justice system. And it's difficult to find the proper judges for this, to change the system, because there is always a possibility of corruption. Many of them are not even well prepared. We require international participation to ensure that this takes place. But unfortunately, we have a world which is a bit indifferent, or at worst, they have double standards. What happened to Bolivia, what happened to Lula, what happened to Dilma, what is going on with Venezuela. Then nothing happens internationally. One short-term solution in order to maintain the rule of law in this country, so that we have independent judicial system, so that they really fulfill their ethical job. We need an international system of the rule of law that, vigilates, that makes sure, that monitors democracy and the rule of law. They're supposed to see such a system in Latin America, but actually, obviously, is not it doesn't fulfill such a role. The one that determines what happens in many respects is the United States. The United States has an organization, American States, which is, we call it the Ministry of Colonies. But there have been external problems with the Organization of American States, but we have reached such extremes that we can see that the Organization of American States is totally servile to the United States. We need an international system with one single morality, because the phenomena of these times, I wish there was more time to speak about that. This phenomena, that everything has been ideologized. There is no objective truth anymore. If you're with me, no matter whether you are a criminal, if you are against me, no matter you are a decent guy, will, use the law accordingly. There's the question, if there is any attack against human rights in some countries, then there is no problem. But if it is right that that's the violation, there is no problem. If the left is supposed to have to do it, then it's very wrong. We're seeing a very serious civilization retrogression. If in Venezuela there is the suspicion that the elections were not transparent, they can be blockaded, they can be invaded. You appoint a new president that proclaims himself. But if there is a coup d'etat in Bolivia, then this is fine. This is be destroyed. I think we have a serious setback for civilization as a whole in this rising of extreme right-wing groups that, as I said, they don't respect democracy or anything, human rights, whatever. That also exists in Europe. They're emerging in Europe as well. Oh, now we can see in the United States. What's the difference? In the developed world, in Europe, this still limited. That's why still there is some rule of law. That's why there is, some judicial justice, but there are limitations. But you still have some ethical professionals. In Latin America, that doesn't exist. The media exists just to liquidate the left wing and to support the extreme right-wing groups.
Mr. President, I think I'm going to bring Jeremy in now.
And justice, that's also co-opted. That this is a world problem that's to do with the kind of civilization we have, and it can be resolved to larger things as a real, well-organized international system without double morality, with one single morality. Thank you very much.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much. And there is so much that you covered there. We may have time for you to come back for a couple of questions, but let me now turn to Jeremy Corbyn, who is, of course, MP, long-standing campaigner, and a great internationalist, and in absolute solidarity with Latin America. We really desperately want to see Ecuador go back into its golden period, and I'm sure that Jeremy will talk about how we in Britain and the international community can assist in solidarity with that. Jeremy, the floor is yours.
Christine, thank you very much. Y felicidades, Rafael, el presidente de Ecuador para mí. And can I say thank you to you, Christine, for chairing today's event and for the work you do as a teacher in the Teachers Union, and of course in our upper chamber in Britain, to stand up for progressive causes all around the world. And it's that sense of network and solidarity that these calls give us the chance to put forward. I also want to say a big thank you to Belgica for what she said at the beginning of the call, and for her work in the Labour Party, her work for her community, and her work for solidarity with the progressive cause of Latin America. Belgica, muchísimas gracias para todos su trabajando. Rafael and I had a very good conversation in Brussels last year. We spent a long time together going through the issues that he had faced in Ecuador, and the way in which he's being pursued relentlessly by lawfare, even though he's not any longer actually in Ecuador. And that shows, first of all, the persistence of the lawfare campaign, but it also shows what a very important figure he is, that he's been pursued in this way all around the world legally. Rafael, you have our solidarity and you have our support, and you have a lot of friends around the world for everything that you achieved as president and everything that the progressive forces in Ecuador will achieve when I believe they'll be elected again. You talk about lawfare. I was just, when I came back in this evening, watching CNN news coverage of the US elections. Well, it's quite extraordinary that one candidate has asked the voting counting to be stopped because he doesn't like the direction in which it's going. It's a new form of lawfare that lawyers are sent into every court all across the USA to stop the counting because of the direction in which the election is going. I can imagine what would have been said had the new president in Bolivia said the same during the election, or anybody else said by the world's media. It's absurd and extraordinary, but very, very dangerous indeed. Now, the attacks that take place against any of us that stand up for social justice, that stand up against the power of corporations and stand up for that kind of inclusive society that we all want to live in, is actually the whole issues of neoliberal economics. And it hasn't gone away. And indeed, whilst it's great that we are on a Zoom call today, and I suspect we're only on a Zoom call because of the COVID crisis, but the one thing we've learned from the COVID crisis is we don't need the world's media to communicate with each other. We can do it ourselves very simply by this system. And that is something that isn't going to go away. And I hope we're going to be doing these kind of conferences and calls for a long time to come. But the other message from COVID is that the global corporations, the neoliberal forces, will exploit every issue. And the wealth gap in every country has grown bigger during the corona crisis. The profitability of some global corporations has grown massively during this period. And whilst every government has had to put quite a lot of public resources into dealing with the corona crisis, they've also poured money into private companies to do it. In the case of Britain, they poured money into one company to do testing, to Serco, and to others. They poured vast amounts of money into them, and that we have to challenge. But the struggles of the people of Latin America for social justice are not new. You read the history of opposition going back to the Spanish invasion and occupation. Read the incredible bravery of people that stood up against the imposition of Spanish language against them, in the case of Bolivia particularly. And then you look at the struggles after independence of the 1820s against the landowners and the settler bourgeoisie that controlled the political society and economies of so many of those countries. And so it's not as if there isn't something that's gone on for a very long time. And without going too much into history, because Christine will stop me and say I've gone off subject, possibly, what I would like to do is just draw attention to a small number of countries. There isn't time to draw attention to all of them. In the case of Ecuador, you won an election, you opposed neoliberalism, you opposed having a US base in the country, you protected and improved the environment of the country, you protected and improved the living standards of the poorest, you redistributed wealth from the richest to the poorest. What is there not to like about that?
Quite.
Well, if you're an American company, there's an awful lot not to like about that, because they knew very, very well that the whole objective of your government was about creating that fair and just society. And as Bernie Sanders once said during one of his campaigns, absolutely brilliantly, he said, America can afford anything. We've got the money, we've got the resources, we can afford anything, except the greed of the rich and the inequality that goes with it. And in that he was so right. And so, Rafael, you were forced out of the country by lawfare, the new form of coup. In the past, the army was used against popular movements in every country in Latin America. The army was used in coups against progressive governments all over Latin America, and the media were excessively used to undermine and destroy them. The new form of coup is lawfare, where you ensnare somebody in endless strings of legalism that they cannot get out of, and eventually the government has to change. And in the meantime, you besmirch and smear the character of the individual. Look at what was done against you, Rafael. Look what was done against Lula. Look what was done against Dilma. And so the list goes on. But things do go full circle. In the case of Chile, they had the most brutal coup in 1973. They had a terrible period of Pinochet's dictatorship and the tens of thousands that suffered and thousands who died as a result of it. And eventually, the Pinochet era passed, sort of. There was the Cambio de Mano in 1990. And it's taken until now for popular movements to bring about the principles of rewriting the constitution. So a constitution based on fairness, based on rights, is something that the Chilean people have a hope and can look forward to. And then Bolivia, Evo stood up for cocoa farmers, stood up against water privatization. And because he stood up, because that movement stood up, it became MAS, it became the political party. He won the presidency, and MAS won control of the government. And the constitutional changes, the social changes, the genuine independence of the USA is a price that they paid for when another lawfare coup removed Evo from office. But the elections that were recently held, absolutely incredible result, and my congratulations to everyone in Bolivia for what they achieved. But they need our solidarity now in order to reassert those values that MAS brought into office when Evo was president. Otherwise, lawfare will go on and the US sanctions regime will go on. But sanctions regimes can have two effects. One is, yes, they do damage the economy immediately. They do damage living standards immediately. They do remove the possibility of trade and imports with the United States, and the long tentacles of the Helms-Burton Act do apply all over the world. But they also have the effect of giving the opportunity to strengthen the local economy away from dependence on trade with the US. And I think those are issues we need to look at, and also to recognize whatever other problems there are in Venezuela, none of those problems are going to be solved by US sanctions undermining any economic development and any development in Venezuela. One of the bright spots of the past 2 years in Latin America has been the success of AMLO in winning the presidency in Mexico. I was there for the election results, and seeing him take office was a wonderful moment. And his support for Evo during the period of the coup was crucial and very important. And I think we should say thank you to Andres Manuel Lopez Obrador and also to Marcelo Ebrard for the work that they did in protecting Evo at an absolutely crucial time. At the moment, the US is electing a new president. I suspect it's going to be Biden who will take office, but he will go through hell and high water before January the 20th, because Donald Trump doesn't look as though he's going to leave office easily. And so whether that relationship will fundamentally change with Latin America because of a Biden administration, I would hope so, but it's only going to change if there is an assertion of demands from people in Latin America with the support of people, particularly young people all across the USA, to assert those values. The two general points I want to make before I stop, Christine, are these: that the left around the world, the progressive forces around the world, have enormous support, empathy, and sympathy. And having fought 2 general elections in Britain on very progressive manifestos that were outlining redistribution of power and wealth within our society, and an international strategy based on peace, justice, and human rights, rather than the awful principles which dragged us into the Iraq war. We faced the most incredible levels of opposition, particularly from right-wing media that firstly were smart enough to recognize that our policies of social justice and improvement of the living standards of the poorest people were very popular. They also recognized that we were mobilizing a very large number of young people in support of it. And so they did everything they could to attack the policies and attack the individuals who were in leading positions in the party. Only a year ago at this very moment, I was being attacked in debates with Boris Johnson for wanting to spend far too much money on social justice, on supporting local government, on health and all the other things, and was told that my program was completely unaffordable and would bankrupt the country. They've already spent more on subsidizing the economy during the corona crisis in order to survive economically than ever I suggested. It shows perfectly well that a transitional strategy, which does run up a degree of government borrowing in order to invest in the future, becomes both an economic stimulus and a stimulus to bring about greater justice in our society. So we were attacked by the media, and it was an attempt to isolate us, and that we have to fight back against, which means that we have to develop our own form of communications. We cannot rely on the mainstream media to carry our message, and we should be cautious of a whole global electronic information system that essentially comes from 2 or 3 companies in the United States. We need to think about our own independent forms of communication with each other. The crucial issues facing the world at the present time are economic injustice, are the rise of the far right and racism, the rise of anti-Semitism, of Islamophobia, of far-right racism all across Europe, the rise of racism in the USA, are designed to divide working class people and working class communities. There is no common ground with any form of racism of any sort. It has to be totally and resolutely opposed. You have to unite people to recognize that racism is used by the right and used by the economically powerful in order to divide the rest of society and communities. And also, the greatest issue facing the whole planet, as the corona crisis has shown, is actually the environmental crisis that we're in the midst of. The global warming that's going on, the global pollution that's going on, the pollution of rivers and seas and air, and the loss of biodiversity and the natural world. You cannot protect the environment if at the same time you're promoting free market economics, which says a forest tree is worth as much as the wood it contains. It's not worth anything towards the global environment or to the biodiversity and ecosystem that we have. That a river is something you can pollute because it's a way of cheaply getting rid of your waste. It's an attitude about the environment, and President Correa's government was wonderful in the sense that you dealt with and confronted the issues of environmental damage. And so COP26 comes up next year, and that's an important opportunity for us to assert the values of environmental sustainability. And all those that want environmental sustainability must recognize that you can't achieve it with free market economics and global corporations allowed to get rip and try and defend themselves by greenwash advertising. When somebody like David Attenborough says that free market capitalism is a threat to the world's environment, he's absolutely right. And so I want us to see a stronger sense of internationalism and international movements. I'm working very hard on those issues in that direction, and to do everything we can to bring people together. And this means of communication can do it. Only a couple of 3 weeks ago, I was on an evening call, a global call between people in Britain, some other parts of the world, and particularly India, where we're talking to a group of Indian farmers who are trying to defend their land against a coal mine being financed by British banks in order to destroy their forest and their farming opportunities. We can and must express our solidarity in every possible way we can, and that begins to bring about the changes. Winning elections is obviously very important and a key to progress. But merely holding office without changing anything when you do hold office is a road to nowhere. But it's also recognizing that people are empowered by their own actions. Workers, when they take strike action, are powerful. Environmental campaigners, when they take action, are powerful. Consumer rights campaigns are powerful. Women are powerful when they demand their rights and achieve those rights because of their own action. So I hope that we can take from this discussion, I'm looking forward to the questions, how we can build that sense of unity. And I'm going to stop now because Christine will mute me and I won't be able to say anything more. Thank you very much, everybody.
Jeremy, thank you. Thank you very much. We've had lots of questions, but we have got very little time. So I'm kind of gonna try and roll together a couple of questions and ask, first of all, President Correa to give his observations on these issues. So we've been talking today about neoliberalism and about the alternatives. I wonder if you can say, Mr. President, a couple of things about what we learned from the different states' responses to the coronavirus crisis, and what kind of state we need to move on beyond that, and perhaps also to say something about the very important remarks that you made about the need for international approaches, how we can actually think about linking up progressive struggles around the world, and how the left globally can actually work in solidarity. I'd be delighted if you could offer us some insights on that. So the floor is yours, Rafael Correa.
Mire, la izquierda global lo que tiene es ideas, mensajes, pero creo que eso ya es bastante.
What we have is ideas, messages, but I think that's sufficient. Because if there is something that has the pandemic, that the neoliberalism in a, sort of national neoliberal narrowness in a world which is so globalized is ridiculous. And so the effort must be collected. This implies many things. For example, we can define the state as the form of society organized where decisions are taken collectively. How does society take those decisions? Through political process. This is politics as the rational form in which a society takes their decisions in a collective manner. If something the pandemic taught us, which was obvious, because the neoliberalism was telling us everybody should find their own way. There is an invisible hand that improves everything. It's so invisible, that hand, that nobody has seen it so far. The equality is as a result of a visible hand. That society, deliberately and visibly take those decisions to improve people. If there is something which is not true, that's something that we have to remember that is evident, is that we're all interdependent. If somebody is ill, and now everybody is suffering, it's not only because of this problem, we're all in the same boat. We depend one from each other. But there is some broad space for collective action, even democracy itself. In liberal democracy in advanced countries, liberalism contradicts liberal democracy. Because if something is more expensive than voting, then I'm not going to vote. There are elections in European countries particularly. So that democracy functions, we have to overcome that individual logic and we have to look for the common good. This pandemic has made us understand this. There are many important things, such as they're so important that cannot be considered, merchandise. Even Emmanuel Macron, the French president, who is a banker, who is neoliberal, has said that agriculture is so important that we cannot leave it to the vagaries of the market. The market is terrible arbiter. The modern left cannot deny the market because of economic reality. But one is societies that depends on the market, where everything is subjected to the needs of the market, and something else is society where the market exists and is regulated and controlled by this society, so that it produces the result, the fruits that are regarded by society. And we all understand the limitations of the market, because we cannot accept, for example, the question of the access to healthcare. I know that many times, to be of the left in the manual where you take a box, you have to be, Jeremy is British, you have the Anglican Church here. Pope Francis has just produced a wonderful encyclical. This is the first ecological encyclical of the Church, the Catholic Church in their history, where on top of criticizing, quite strongly neoliberalism, and then it talks about the immigrants. It says, but he really buries neoliberalism because they're incompatible with Christian faith. Neoliberalism is incompatible with Christian faith, and says therefore there is a need for collective action, the need to resuscitate politics. And I think the Pope Francis I is doing extremely well. And these times are incredible because the church is burying, burying neoliberalism under criticism. Therefore, I think the pandemic, we can learn a huge number of things. For example, the importance of collective action. For example, that there are things that cannot be part of the market because they are human needs. This is where the left needs to come in. We cannot really leave behind those who are more vulnerable to the pandemic or to the market. That is enough. Enough is enough. All this nonsense is enough. We have just accept that only the search for profit is the only thing that matters, and whatever happens as a consequence doesn't matter. We need to have a very visible action, very visible hand that takes rational decisions to help people and does it through the state apparatus. And this has been the position of the left all the time.
Thank you so much for those remarks. That's a real call to action. I have to say, it's not very often we hear the Pope prayed in aid on meetings like this, but when people say the right things and appear to be doing the right things, we have to support what they're saying. It's absolutely true. I'm going to come to Jeremy to just make a few final remarks, but just before I do that, because we're going to have to finish kind of abruptly, I just want to say thank you to everyone who's been on the call this evening. Thank you very much to our speakers, of course, to President Correa, but I also want to say that we've had people from all across the UK. We've had people in from Spain, from Ecuador, from Chile, from Canada, from Mexico, from the US, taking time off from watching the presidential election, no doubt, from Uruguay, from Brazil, and from Germany. I think there is a real appetite for these meetings so that we can hear the voices from all around the world. And so I'm going to now come to Jeremy to just make a few closing remarks. I just want to thank everybody again, and thank in particular those who've done the interpretation for us. We've heard about the heroic struggles that are going on. We've heard a call to arms from Rafael Correa, and now we will hear a call from Jeremy to make sure that we are really standing in solidarity, not just with all of our friends and comrades who are facing lawfare, but everybody who is fighting for social justice globally. So, Jeremy, I give you the floor.
Christine, thank you very much, and thank you to all those that organised this call, did the translation and the technical part of it. The technicians and the translators are the heroes of progressive forces all around the world, so thank you very much for that. And Rafael, to follow the points you made at the end of your contribution, the way you describe markets is so important. A market is a place where you buy things, a place where you sell things. If you allow your entire philosophy to be dominated by the price you buy, the price you sell, and the profit can be made from it, and you ignore all of the consequences of that, you end up with a dog-eat-dog society. If instead you say that the needs of our people, the needs of our world, and the needs of our economy in the sense of a decent living standard, of education, of health, of housing, of meaningful work, of environmental protection, of cultural development, of artistry and music, if you make all that dependent on free market economics, you won't get any of that. You will merely get a tiny minority of excessively rich people consuming a vast amount, and the rest of the population consuming not enough, and at the margins a very large number with nothing sufficient to eat. And our present global world, around 20% of the world's population are food insecure. 65 million people are refugees with no home to call their own, and there is desperate poverty even in the richest countries in the world. Is anyone actually happy walking down an apparently prosperous street, coming across people sleeping on it and begging because they can't survive? A good society is one that cares for all, and that is what unites us all. And so what I want us to get from this call is a recognition of the methods that are being used to undermine progressive people such as Rafael and destroy progressive governments such as in Brazil, in Bolivia, and so on, all across Latin America, but also that sense of powerful unity that we need to build across the world. So when people write to me and say, I'm nobody, but I'd like to let you know something, I get very angry, not because they've written to me, but because they've described themselves as nobody. Nobody is nobody. Everybody is somebody. Everybody has a brain, has a use, and so on. And you have to recognize that and work with them. And we need a global movement in solidarity with those that are stepping forward to try to bring about that social justice, such as what is now happening in Bolivia. And well done to all of those in mass for what they've achieved, and full support to the people of Ecuador as they move into an election next year. The lessons of the corona crisis are simply this, that unless you have global health care, unless you have a sharing of science and medicine and the benefits from it, then the death rates will rise. First, they'll rise amongst the poorest around the world, and then later on, they will affect everybody else. We are at risk of the lack of health care of the poorest and most vulnerable in the world. The only way forward has got to be universal health care, and that's where I strongly support the principles behind the World Health Organization. So, unite on the environment, unite on healthcare, unite on social justice, unite against the unaccountable power of global corporations that are trying to undermine all the international institutions that we've worked with in the past. That is real human rights and real human justice, and that is what unites all of us and we're determined to achieve. Christine, muchísimas gracias por todos esta noche.
Thank you very much, Jeremy. So with huge thanks to our three speakers, Belgia Guanyar and Rafael Correa, of course, and Jeremy Corbyn. And thanks so much to all of you. Muchas gracias to everybody who has been on this call from all around the world. We have really heard what the world could be like. Another world definitely is possible. What's required is a massive effort of international solidarity. So, comrades, the work begins. Thank you very much for listening. We have to cut the call almost immediately, but solidarity to you all. Thank you. Good night.